Due to some sexual content, parental discretion is advised.
Okay, so it's really more innuendo, but welcome everyone. This is the cover for the first issue of a new project I'm very excited about from Vault Comics called Money Shot. It is written by Tim Seeley. You guys know we worked on a bunch of stuff together. I think this is the 20th issue, if I'm counting correctly, that we've done together. The line artist is Rebekah, whose art has just completely blown me away in these books. We actually worked together on a hack slash cover last year, you might remember. I will link to that video. And it's being lettered by the talented Crank. So first I'm going to play some music and let this little time-lapse run, because trying to talk over a time-lapse, I find myself chasing what I'm doing in the time-lapse. So instead we're going to play some tunes, play the time-lapse, and then when we get done, we'll jump into Photoshop and I'll walk you guys through the process. Alright, so we are now in Photoshop, and luckily the way that I work, I tend to just add a new layer when I want to go into a new step, so you guys can kind of see things chronologically even in the file here. But we'll start with the basics, and I actually flatted this myself. I know, shocking, right? You guys that, that know how much I love flatting. So the whole thought process here of why I chose these colors, because that's something I know a lot of you guys ask about. So with this cover, I decided to keep the background sort of cool and all the foreground very warm, especially because it's a pretty dense cover. You know, there's a lot going on right here in the middle, and there's not a lot of separation. There's not a lot of background in between these characters here. So if the colors of the foreground and the background were similar at all, this could get kind of muddy if you're not careful, and I really didn't want that to happen. So what I did was keep the background really cool, character's very warm, and that's kind of a theme throughout the entire thing. And in the background, I did a little bit of rendering at the start, just putting some subtle gradients at the top, you know, lights in the windows, you know, putting these details down here at the bottom. The next thing I did was to add this wash, which is sort of a kind of a middle purple color, and this is in hard light mode. Oh, by the way, if you don't know how to just show one layer visibility, you can just hold down Alt or Option on a Mac and click the visibility toggle, and that'll only show that layer, and then click it again to go back. I used to use the blending mode color, you know, just the color blending mode whenever I was wanting to do this, but I really like the way that hard light mixes a little bit better, and I've started using that a little bit more, and I did that here. But this wash is only contained to the characters, and again, this really helps pull them forward against that background. And the next layer is where the rendering starts on this, and you'll see there's a pretty obvious, just a round circle, kind of a spotlight here, right in the middle of the cover. And the reason I did that was, well, for one, it's the composition of the cover is already a very strong kind of central composition, and because the ship has these round windows, I thought, well, maybe there's another window on this side and they're lit from it. So that's what you're seeing here. You can kind of see that strong round shape all the way around it. And I'll tell you what I was going to do and decided that it wasn't going to work was to make this a heart. I was going to try to do this with this shape because it definitely fits the theme of this book. But what ended up happening was these two characters' heads would have been completely in shadow almost, and I couldn't really find a way to make this work and to keep that shape the way that I wanted. So that would have been cool, but ended up going with the circle. So after I laid in all of the highlights, and these are in linear dodge mode, or add mode if you're in Procreate, is what they call it. One word of advice if you want to use this particular mode. Now I'm using, just so those of you that are curious, it's kind of a really saturated orange color, which you'll notice that you can see straight through it. The opacity is pretty low on this because linear dodge is kind of like color dodge. Like it can really overexpose and kind of blow the light out entirely. And so if you're going to use linear dodge mode, just be really careful with the opacity. I would say that the highest opacity here is probably 50% or so on the brush that I was using. The next stage was this light here, this kind of red pink. And so my thought was, there's a kind of a red light right off the frame here. So you can see it's really strong on his chest, on his arms, on the side of his head, the right side of her body. And you see a little bit of that getting up here on these other characters, but it's kind of minimal. And yes, I know that this light probably wouldn't be seen all the way up here through all these characters, but this is comics and you don't have to follow reality if you don't want to. If it doesn't look cool enough, you can do something different. No, someone's going to take me out of context on that. Next was the rim light. There was actually a couple little rim light layers that I did. You can see that primarily on the top two characters. That light kind of popping in and out, as if this light was coming from outside these windows here. Oh, by the way, that red light was in normal mode, just this bright pink color. The rim lights were also in normal mode. And then next I added some details to the rendering of the light, the spotlight light, the main light source. And you can see that on the characters' faces. And this is all contained to the bright side of the terminators for that main light source. And if you want to know, like, kind of how I decide where these lights go and where they don't go and which light goes where, be sure to watch the video I put up not too long ago called Lighting Like a Pro Simplified, I think is what the thumbnail says. But it kind of explains my formula for this. While I was editing this, I found out that I can put this video out earlier so that it actually coincides when this book gets announced. So that means the video I just asked you to go watch is not out yet. That just means you should subscribe because it's coming out very soon. Great segue into the old pitch. Okay, I'm done. Next, I did kind of a really subtle vignette along the bottom. You can see that kind of dark purpley color kind of bouncing in here. Very, very subtle. I end up strengthening this a little bit later, and you'll see it. And then it was about this point that I realized that I wanted more contrast between the background and the foreground and in the color temperatures, because right now, the background is sort of this color, close to it, something like this, at least overall. The main color of all the characters is kind of more this purpley red area, and I really wanted to push this more around to the almost orange. Not completely orange, of course, but even warmer, even hotter light right in the middle. And so I put an overlay layer right on top of basically all of the characters here. And it splashes a little bit outside of that original, spotlight shape. But this is a weird kind of lime green color. It's kind of a muddy mustard color. And some of you guys, I get asked a lot about, well, how did you choose that color? Well, I probably didn't choose that color exactly. I'll tell you what I tend to do. So let's say I don't know what I want to do exactly. I know I want it to be oranger and warmer and brighter and all that, but I don't know exactly what color to try. So I'll make a new layer. I'll set this to the same layer mode, kind of an overlay, and I'll go grab like what I think it should be. Now an overlay, I find it best to kind of stay along the middle, right about 50% brightness. It tends to work best kind of along that area. So I probably would have picked something, I don't know, about like this and just filled it in and then thought, that's way too strong. That's not at all what I wanted. And then I end up just opening up hue saturation and kind of goofing around with it until it does, what I want it to do. And that's probably how I arrived at this strange yellow-green color here. And that'll get tweaked even more later too. I ended up putting another overlay layer on top of this with this dark blue color to kind of darken the blues a little bit more. Again, it's pretty subtle, but you guys can probably see that turning off and on. Super subtle color balance that is barely even doing anything. I don't know what I was thinking with some of these adjustments. And then I strengthened that vignette effect a little bit more with another, this is a multiply layer, about 50%. Yeah, it's kind of a light blue color. And you can see that on the bottom and the top, darkening those areas. And in my opinion, the thing to keep in mind about multiply, you know, a lot of people want to use multiply for shadows, and that's fine. It works great for that. I use it for that a lot too. But if you try to combine dark colors with a blending mode of multiply that also only darkens, it tends to get way too dark way too fast. So you'll notice that a lot of times if I use multiply for shadows, it's really bright, usually pretty desaturated colors from like the top left, you know, quadrant of the color picker up here. And then there's this levels adjustment here. I realized about this point that the middle wasn't as bright as I wanted it to be, especially on the characters. So I selected the characters and selected the area just where that spotlight is and just brighten that up with a levels adjustment. And if you want to see what the mask looks like for this, I was using a mask to control where this effect goes. So if you, is it alt click? Yeah. So if you alt or option click on the mask, so all these white areas, those are the areas where the layer, the levels adjustment is strongest. And then in the black areas, those are not affected at all by the levels adjustment. That's pretty much it as far as the under the lines. Now, I did some color holds, kind of lighten those up just a little bit. There wasn't many glows in this at all. It was really just, this space weight or that he's using here. I love the fact that his barbell even looks like it came from Mass Effect or something. And then I put some glow on that button down there that she's pressing so that it looks like it's doing something. And then there was some text at the bottom to make it look like it was, let's say, recording for a video, which is sort of the theme of this book. I will throw in some other artwork. It really is full of all sorts of drama and action and comedy and adult situations, and I'm about as excited as I've been for a project to be on this book. The writing's amazing. Rebekah is doing amazing stuff, and I'm just having fun with it. So thank you guys for watching. I'll link to some other videos you guys might want to see, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.